Caroline stood in front of her classmates, ready to speak. But as soon as she opened her mouth, she froze. The words were in her mind, but they wouldn't come out. She paused again and again. Her heart pounded. Why can't I just speak smoothly like everyone else, she thought. Welcome to the Fluent Storybook. Here, we help you improve your English through stories. If you want to speak English confidently and without pausing, stay with us until the end. This story will show you how to do it in a simple and fun way. Caroline sat at her desk, staring at her notebook with unfocused eyes. The words from Mrs. Bennet, her English teacher, still echoed in her mind. Next week, each of you will present a 2-minute speech in front of the class. A 2-minute speech. 120 seconds of standing in front of everyone, speaking in English with no pauses, no mistakes, just smooth, confident speech. Caroline's hands trembled as she gripped her pen. It wasn't that she didn't know English. She had been learning it for years. She could write long essays and read thick books. She could understand movies, even without subtitles. But speaking? That was an entirely different challenge. Every time she tried to speak, she felt like her mind was running in slow motion. Words that made perfect sense in her head suddenly disappeared when she opened her mouth. She would start a sentence, only to stop halfway, frozen in panic as she searched for the right words. The worst part? The silence. She hated those long, awkward pauses, the moments when her classmates would look at her, waiting, expecting her to continue, while she struggled to find the words. The pressure made her chest tighten. The fear of messing up, of saying something wrong, of being laughed at. These thoughts played on repeat in her mind. The last time she had tried speaking in class, it had been a disaster. Mrs. Bennet had asked a simple question. What do you think about this story? Caroline had an answer in her head. She had even rehearsed it in her mind. But when she opened her mouth, nothing. A long, painful silence stretched between her and the class. Finally, she mumbled, It was good. The story was, interesting. Mrs. Bennet gave her an encouraging smile, but Caroline could feel the heat rising in her face. She had wanted to say more. She had wanted to sound smart, confident, but all she had managed was a short, broken sentence. That moment had stayed with her, haunting her every time she tried to speak. At lunch, she sat with her best friend, Olivia, poking at her sandwich instead of eating it. What's wrong? Olivia asked. Caroline sighed. I always pause when I speak English. The words are in my head, but when I try to say them, I just stop. I can't think of the right word, and then I get nervous, and then I stop even more. It's so embarrassing. Olivia nodded. I used to have the same problem. Caroline looked up in surprise. You? Olivia smiled. Yep. I would start a sentence and then freeze because I couldn't remember a word. I was scared people would think I was dumb. So I just stopped speaking English. Caroline frowned. But you speak so well now. That's because I changed the way I practiced, Olivia said. And I can help you too. Caroline hesitated. I don't know. What if I mess up? Everyone messes up, Olivia said with a shrug. The important thing is to keep talking. Caroline wanted to believe her, but she couldn't forget all the times she had paused awkwardly in conversations. She had always thought that fluency meant speaking without mistakes, without hesitation. But Olivia made it sound different, like fluency was just about not stopping. After school, Olivia grabbed Caroline's arm and pulled her toward the library. What are we doing? Caroline asked, confused. We're starting now, Olivia said. The only way to stop pausing is to speak more. So, we want to practice. Caroline groaned. Olivia, I'm not ready. What if I? No what ifs. Just try. Olivia led her to a quiet table in the corner. Okay, just tell me about your day in English. Caroline hesitated. Today I woke up and I had breakfast. She stopped. She had wanted to say, I ate scrambled eggs, but she forgot the word for scrambled. Her eyes widened in panic. See? This is what happens. I get stuck. Olivia shook her head. You're doing fine. Just keep going, even if you don't know a word. Caroline frowned. But I don't want to sound silly. You won't, Olivia assured her. Just try. Instead of stopping, explain it in another way. Caroline thought for a moment. I ate, eggs that were not fried and not boiled. Scrambled. Olivia guessed. Caroline nodded. Yes, scrambled eggs. Olivia grinned. See? You didn't pause for too long. You kept going. Caroline laughed nervously. I guess that worked. That small moment gave her a little confidence, but she knew she had a long way to go. She had to speak smoothly, without long pauses, and without feeling like her mind was shutting down. The real test would be the class presentation. Could she do it? She wasn't sure yet. That night, as she lay in bed, Caroline thought about her struggles. She wished speaking English was as easy as writing or reading. But words seemed to stick inside her, refusing to come out when she needed them. The next day, Caroline walked into class, still feeling nervous about the upcoming speech. Mrs. Bennett smiled at the students. I know many of you feel nervous about speaking in front of the class, she said. But remember, fluency doesn't mean speaking perfectly. It means speaking without stopping too much. Caroline sat up a little straighter. Could she really learn to do that? At lunch, Olivia sat beside her again. I have an idea, Olivia said. We need to practice in a way that makes you feel comfortable. Let's start small. Just simple sentences. Caroline sighed. I don't know. What if I can't do it? You can, Olivia said, and I'll show you how. Caroline tapped her fingers nervously on the cafeteria table as she stared at Olivia. Simple sentences? She repeated. That's your big idea? Olivia grinned. Yep. You keep pausing because you try to say everything perfectly. But if we start with simple sentences, you'll get used to speaking without stopping. Caroline sighed. She wanted to believe that something so small could help, but she wasn't sure. Okay, but what do I even say? Just tell me things you do every day, Olivia said. But keep it super simple. Like, I wake up. Caroline hesitated, then said slowly, I wake up. Olivia nodded. Good. Now say something else. Caroline bit her lip. I eat breakfast. Olivia clapped her hands together. Yes, that's exactly it. Keep going. Caroline sat up a little straighter. I go to school. Great. What next? Caroline's mind went blank. What did she do next? She walked into school. She talked to friends. She went to class. But how could she say it simply? She hesitated, feeling the panic rise. You're pausing again, Olivia pointed out. But don't stop. Just say something. Anything. Caroline took a deep breath. I talked to friends. There you go. Olivia grinned. See? Even when you got stuck, you found a way to keep talking. Caroline frowned. But this is too easy. I need to be able to say bigger things. Olivia shrugged. That'll come later. Right now, the goal is to keep talking. No pauses. No long silences. Caroline thought about it. Maybe Olivia had a point. If she could train herself to keep speaking, even in short sentences, maybe she could build up to longer ones. For the next few days, Olivia and Caroline practiced every lunch break. At first, Caroline felt silly speaking in such short, simple sentences. I wake up. I eat. I go to school. I study. I talk to friends. It felt like kindergarten English. But the more she did it, the more comfortable she felt. One afternoon, Olivia decided to change things up. Okay, now I'm going to ask you random questions, and you have to answer without stopping. No long pauses. Caroline groaned. That sounds terrifying. It's just me, Olivia said. No pressure. Just try. Caroline nodded, feeling a little nervous. Olivia thought for a moment, then asked, What's your favorite food? Caroline's mind instantly thought of spaghetti, but she panicked because she didn't know how to explain why she liked it. She started, I like, spaghetti because... She stopped. Keep going, Olivia said quickly. Even if you don't know the words, find another way to say it. Caroline swallowed and tried again. I like spaghetti because it is long and it has red sauce. And it tastes good. Olivia gave her a thumbs up. Yes, that was perfect. Caroline blinked. But I didn't say it perfectly. But you kept talking, Olivia said. That's the whole point. Caroline sat back, thinking. Maybe she had been focusing on the wrong thing all along. She always thought she needed to say things perfectly, but maybe what really mattered was just saying something. Anything without stopping. She smiled a little. Ask me another one. For the next 10 minutes, Olivia asked her random questions, and Caroline answered the best she could. Sometimes she didn't know the exact word she wanted, but instead of freezing, she found another way to explain it. By the time they were done, She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: confidence. The next day, as she sat in English class, she felt a little different. When Mrs. Bennet asked the class, "What's a book you've enjoyed reading?" Caroline raised her hand before she could stop herself. Her heart pounded as Mrs. Bennet called on her. She took a deep breath and said, "I read a book. It was about a girl who finds a secret place." She felt herself pausing again. She could feel the pressure building. The class was waiting. But instead of shutting down, she remembered Olivia's advice. "Just keep talking." She swallowed and continued. It was interesting because she had to find how to open it, and the story was exciting. Mrs. Bennet smiled. "That sounds like a great book, Caroline. Thank you for sharing." Caroline exhaled, realizing she had done it. She had spoken without stopping for too long. As the bell rang, Olivia whispered, "See, you're getting better." Caroline grinned. Maybe she was, but she wasn't done yet. She still had one more challenge ahead: learning how to keep speaking even when she completely forgot what to say. Caroline walked home that afternoon with a small smile on her face. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time, she had spoken in class without completely freezing. It felt like a tiny victory. Olivia was right. If she kept her sentences simple and focused on not stopping, she could actually keep a conversation going. But as she reached her front door, another thought crept into her mind. What if she was in a situation where she completely forgot what to say? In class, she had hesitated, but at least she had managed to find her words. What if next time she got completely stuck? She shook off the thought and stepped inside. "Mom, I'm home," her mother called back from the kitchen. "Hi, sweetheart. How was your day?" Caroline set her backpack down and hesitated. She usually answered quickly, "It was fine," or "It was good," but today she decided to push herself a little. She took a breath and said, I talked in class today." Her mom turned around, looking pleasantly surprised. "Oh, what did you talk about?" Caroline felt her stomach tighten. How do I explain this? She opened her mouth, but couldn't find the right words. She could see the book in her mind, but she didn't know how to describe it clearly. Her mind went blank. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." Her mother gave her a kind smile. "Take your time." Caroline felt herself wanting to stay quiet and just shake her head. But then she thought of Olivia's words. Keep talking, even if you don't know the perfect words. She forced herself to say something. Anything. It was about a girl and a secret place. Her mother nodded, encouraging her. Caroline kept going. She had to find a way to open it. And it was exciting. Her mother smiled. "That sounds really interesting. What was the secret place?" Caroline hesitated again. She remembered the book, but the words just weren't coming fast enough. Instead of staying silent, she tried to explain it in another way. It was, like a room, but not a room. It was hidden, like behind something. A hidden passage, her mom guessed. Caroline's face lit up. "Yes, that's it. A hidden passage." Her mom nodded. "That's a great book. I can see why you liked it." Caroline exhaled. That was hard, but she had done it. She had kept talking, even when she wasn't sure how to say things. That night, as she got ready for bed, she sent Olivia a text. "Caroline, I got stuck talking to my mom today, but I kept going. It was hard, but I did it." Olivia, yes, that's amazing. See, you don't have to stop just because you don't know a word. You just find another way to explain it. Caroline smiled as she turned off her phone. Maybe this was actually working. The next day at school, Caroline and Olivia decided to take their practice one step further. "I'm going to ask you harder questions today," Olivia said at lunch. "Ones that make you think. And no stopping. Even if you don't know what to say, you have to keep talking." Caroline groaned. "You're making this way too hard." Olivia laughed. "Trust me, this is how you get better. Ready?" Caroline sighed. "Fine. What's the question?" Olivia thought for a moment. "Okay, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?" Caroline blinked. "Oh, wow. I don't know. Just say anything," Olivia urged. "Don't stop." Caroline exhaled. "Okay, I would go to Paris." "Why?" "Because," Caroline hesitated. She knew she wanted to say something about the Eiffel Tower, but she didn't know how to put it into words. "Keep talking," she reminded herself. She kept going. "Because the big thing, the tall thing in Paris." Olivia nodded. The Eiffel Tower? Yes, that. Why do you want to see it? Olivia pressed. Caroline thought hard. She wanted to say something about how it looked beautiful in pictures, but she struggled to form a sentence. It is big, and it looks good in the sky. When the sun is down, it has lights, and it looks really nice. Olivia clapped. Yes, you just described it perfectly. Caroline laughed. That was so hard. But you did it, Olivia said. And you didn't stop. Caroline realized she was sweating a little from the effort, but she also felt proud. She had struggled, but she had kept talking. A few days later, the real test came. In English class, Mrs. Bennet asked a question that made Caroline's stomach drop. What's something that inspires you? Caroline's heart pounded. Her classmates raised their hands and answered one by one. I should say something. She took a deep breath and slowly lifted her hand. Mrs. Bennet smiled. Caroline. Caroline swallowed. Just keep talking. Even if you're not sure, don't stop. She started. I think music inspires me. Mrs. Bennet nodded. That's great. Why? Caroline panicked. She didn't know the perfect words. She felt the pressure of everyone watching her. But instead of shutting down, she made herself keep talking. Because when I listen, I feel different. Like if I'm sad, I hear music and I feel not sad. And some music gives me energy. It makes me strong. She finally stopped, feeling her face heat up. Mrs. Bennet beamed. That was a wonderful answer, Caroline. Well said. Caroline let out a breath. She had done it. Even when she got stuck, even when she didn't know the perfect words, she had kept speaking. Olivia gave her a thumbs up across the room. Caroline grinned. Maybe I'm finally learning how to do this. But she wasn't done yet. There was still one more challenge ahead. Learning how to speak naturally without thinking too much. Caroline felt different. A month ago, she would have never imagined standing in front of her classmates and speaking in English without freezing. But now she had done it. She had spoken up in class. She had explained things to her mom. She had answered Olivia's difficult questions at lunch. She wasn't perfect, but she was getting better. Still, something inside her felt unfinished. She could talk without stopping now. She knew how to explain things in a different way if she forgot a word. But she still felt like she was thinking too much before speaking. Every time she opened her mouth, she planned her sentence in her head first. That evening, she met Olivia at their usual spot at the park. They sat on the swings, sipping smoothies. Olivia was talking about her weekend when she suddenly stopped and looked at Caroline. Okay, she said, setting down her cup. I have a new challenge for you. Caroline groaned. Another one? Olivia grinned. This one is different. You're going to talk for 1 whole minute without stopping. But there's a rule. You're not allowed to think before speaking. Caroline's eyes widened. What? How is that possible? Olivia shrugged. Just say whatever comes to your mind. No planning, no pausing. Just talk. Caroline hesitated. She liked to be careful with her words. She liked to plan her sentences in her head before she said them. Speaking without thinking? That sounded terrifying. But what if I say something wrong? She asked. Who cares? Olivia said. That's the point. You're learning. Just speak, even if it doesn't make sense. Caroline took a deep breath. Fine. What do I talk about? Olivia glanced around and pointed at a tree. Talk about that tree. Caroline looked at it. A tree? What do I even say about a tree? But before she could think too much, Olivia started a timer on her phone. Go! Caroline panicked. Words rushed out of her mouth. Oh, it's a tree. It's big, and it has green leaves. Well, some of them are yellow. Maybe because it's fall? Or maybe the tree is old. I don't know how old trees live. Wait, I mean how long trees live. But some trees are really, really old. Like hundreds of years old, I think. Or maybe thousands. That's a long time to just stand in one place. She stopped to breathe. Olivia clapped. That was 20 seconds. Keep going. Caroline forced herself to continue. Okay, birds sit on trees. Sometimes squirrels, too. I saw one earlier. It was really fast. I don't know what squirrels eat, but they always look like they're running from something. Maybe they just like running. I wish I could run fast like that. But I'm bad at running. Actually, I hate running. I don't know why I'm talking about running. This was supposed to be about a tree. Oh, trees give us air. That's important. We need air. Without trees, I think we would all die. Olivia burst out laughing. Caroline stopped. What? What did I say? Olivia wiped her eyes. Nothing. It's just, you're actually doing it. You're just talking. No thinking. No stopping. Just speaking naturally. Caroline blinked. Wait, I did it. Olivia showed her the timer. 1 minute and 5 seconds. Caroline's jaw dropped. I really talked for a whole minute? Yes, Olivia said. And see, it didn't have to be perfect. You just let the words come out. Caroline stared at the tree again. She had spoken without planning, without stopping, and it had actually worked. The next day at school, Caroline decided to take the challenge further. Instead of carefully preparing her sentences before speaking, she tried to just talk whenever someone asked her something. At lunch, Olivia tested her again. Okay, no thinking. What's your favorite food? Caroline usually would have paused to find the best way to explain. But this time she just answered, mac and cheese. It's warm and cheesy, and I love the way it tastes when it's extra creamy. But I also like pizza. Oh, and French fries. But only when they're crispy. Soggy fries are the worst. Olivia clapped. You're doing it. Caroline laughed. It felt easy. But then came the real test, a surprise conversation with a native speaker. That afternoon, Caroline's English teacher, Mrs. Bennett, made an announcement. Tomorrow, we will have a visitor, she said. A friend of mine is coming to talk to you all about his job. He's from New York, and he's excited to meet you. Caroline's stomach twisted. A real native speaker? Where she got stuck? Where she sounded silly? After school, she told Olivia about it. I'm scared, Caroline admitted. I don't know if I can speak without overthinking in front of a real American. Olivia shook her head. You just did it with me. You can do it again. Caroline still felt unsure. But she had no choice. The next day, she would have to face the challenge. The next day, the visitor arrived. He was a tall man with short brown hair and a friendly smile. Hey, everyone, he said. My name is Jason, and I'm a journalist from New York. The class listened as he talked about his job. He was funny and spoke fast, but Caroline understood most of what he said. Then came the part she was nervous about, questions. Mrs. Bennett smiled. Who wants to ask Jason something? Silence. Caroline felt her heartbeat speed up. She wanted to ask something, but the words weren't forming in her mind fast enough. Then she remembered the tree. The challenge. No thinking, just talking. Before she could stop herself, she raised her hand. Jason smiled at her. Yes. Caroline took a deep breath and spoke. What's the best thing about your job? Jason nodded. Great question. The best thing is getting to travel and meet new people. I love hearing different stories and learning new things. It makes every day exciting. Caroline relaxed. She had done it. Then Jason turned the question back to her. What about you? What job do you think sounds exciting? Caroline's mind went blank. For a second, panic rose in her chest. But she forced herself to just talk. I think maybe a teacher, because I like to help people, and I think it's fun to explain things. Also, my teachers are nice, so I think it's a good job. Jason grinned. That's a great answer. Caroline sat back, relieved and proud. She had done it, spoken without overthinking. And in that moment, she realized something. She wasn't just practicing English anymore. She was really speaking it. Caroline lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. She still couldn't believe what had happened that day. She had spoken to Jason, a real native English speaker, without planning every word in her head. And he had understood her. He had responded like it was just a normal conversation. She had done it. But why did she still feel nervous about speaking English? Even though she had improved, there was still a small voice inside her that whispered, what if you say something wrong? What if people laugh? What if they don't understand you? She turned on her side, sighing. Learning to speak English without pausing was one thing. But speaking with real confidence? That was something else. The next morning, Caroline walked into her classroom, still thinking about confidence. Guess what? Olivia said, bouncing in her seat. Caroline raised an eyebrow. What? I signed us up for the school talent show. Caroline's stomach dropped. What? Olivia, I don't have a talent. Yes, you do, Olivia said, grinning. Your talent is speaking English. Caroline's mouth went dry. No way. No. I can't stand in front of the whole school and talk. That's terrifying. Olivia folded her arms. But you just did it with Jason yesterday. That was different, Caroline muttered. That was just one person. Exactly, Olivia said. Now it's time for the next level. Caroline shook her head. No, I'll mess up. People will laugh. Olivia sighed. Caroline, what's the worst that can happen? Even if you make a mistake, no one cares. And you know what? Everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. Caroline knew Olivia was right. But standing in front of an audience? That still felt impossible. That afternoon, Olivia dragged Caroline to the auditorium to sign up for the talent show. The teacher in charge, Ms. Wilson, smiled at them. What will you two be doing for the show? Olivia nudged Caroline. A short speech, she said. Caroline felt dizzy. A speech? How could you give a speech? Ms. Wilson nodded. Great. You can practice after school on stage if you want. Caroline wanted to run away, but Olivia was already signing their names on the list. Later that day, Caroline stood on the empty stage, staring at the rows of empty chairs in front of her. She imagined them filled with students, all watching her, waiting for her to speak. Her hands started sweating. I can't do this, she whispered. Olivia shook her head. Yes, you can. Start small. Just say one sentence. Caroline swallowed hard. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. She opened her mouth. Hello, everyone. Her voice sounded tiny in the big room. Good, Olivia said. Now say another sentence. Caroline forced herself to keep talking. I am happy to be here today. She kept going, one sentence at a time. Her voice got stronger. She imagined she was just talking to Olivia. By the time she finished, she felt different. Not fearless, but less afraid. The day the talent show arrived, Caroline stood backstage, her hands shaking. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and parents. She could hear the buzz of voices and laughter. She peeked out from behind the curtain. The stage looked bigger than ever. Her heart pounded. I can't do this, she whispered. Olivia squeezed her hand. Yes, you can. Just like yesterday. Just talk. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Next up, we have Olivia and Caroline. Caroline's legs felt frozen, but Olivia was already walking onto the stage. Caroline forced herself to move. One step, another. She reached the microphone. The bright lights blinded her. Silence. For a second, her mind went completely blank. She could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes staring at her. Then Olivia whispered, just say one sentence. Caroline took a deep breath. Her voice shook, but she spoke. Hello, everyone. The microphone carried her words across the huge room. No one laughed. No one whispered. Everyone just listened. Her chest loosened. She took another breath and kept going. I am so happy to be here today. A few months ago, I was afraid to speak English. I used to freeze when someone asked me a question. I would forget my words, and I was scared of making mistakes. She glanced at Olivia, who smiled. But then I learned that mistakes don't matter. What matters is speaking, even if it's not perfect, even if I don't know every word. The most important thing is to keep talking. She looked at the audience. And now, I'm standing here, speaking to all of you, and I am not afraid anymore. The room exploded with applause. Caroline felt a rush of pride. She had done it. She had spoken, without overthinking, without stopping, without fear. That night, Caroline sat on her bed, replaying the moment in her head. She had spent months afraid of speaking, afraid of pausing, afraid of saying something wrong. But in the end, the answer was simple. Confidence came from doing, speaking over and over again, making mistakes, and realizing they didn't matter. She picked up her phone and texted Olivia. Caroline, you were right. I just had a talk. Olivia, told you. You're officially fearless now. Caroline smiled. Not fearless, but fearless enough to keep going. And that was all she needed.